Welcome to the Influential Personal Brand Podcast. This is the place where we help mission-driven messengers just like you learn how to build and monetize your personal brand. My name is Rory Vaden, and I'm the co-founder of Brand Builders Group, a Hall of Fame speaker, and New York Times bestselling author. And this show is to help experts learn how to become more wealthy and well-known. I know you're going to love it. Thanks for being here. Let's get started.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Influential Personal Brand Podcast. This is AJ Vaden here, one of your co-hosts. And today is uber, super duper special because I get to interview a very good, close personal friend. In fact, we've been online together for already 17 minutes, and I just finally hit record. Takes it that long to say our hellos.
It's time for others to join in this conversation just a little bit.
And I have a formal bio that I will read to Dave Avrin. However, everyone, you'll see it online. It's David Arvin. But I think it's really important to know, like, Dave is not only a really good close personal friend, an incredible speaker. He's a multi-time author. But more importantly, I think what everyone really needs to know is that much of the genesis of Rory Vaden, you know, my partner in crime, my husband, much of the genesis of his brand, Take the Stairs, really came through the work that Rory did and the conversations with Dave. And Rory credits you in so many stories. And I think that what people don't know is that you can't do for yourself often what other people can pull out of you. Right. And I think so much that's what we do at Brand Builders Group. It's why books are so important. It's like you can't do for yourself what others you can do in community. And that's what you did for Rory. And Rory still tells everyone that you're his mentor for it's a lifelong mentor, but you're a close personal friend. I think you're just so wicked talented. You're the best dad, awesome husband. So anyone who is listening, I would just encourage you. This is kind of one of those episodes that you just want to stick around for, because we're going to be talking about what it's like to become a highly paid professional speaker, what it's like to write several books, and more importantly, of what his new book is about is how do you become ridiculously easy to do business with? And it doesn't matter who you are, where you're at in your journey, what your business is. We all should want to become ridiculously easy to do business with. So this is an episode for you, right? Sometimes I go, here's what it's for, here's what it's not for. But today it's for you. It's for all of you. So with that, let me give you a little bit of the formal accolades, and then we'll jump right in. All right. Here's what you need to know about Dave Avrin. He's one of the most in-demand customer experience speakers out there. He also does tons of consultings for companies all around the world. He is a CSP, which is a certified speaking professional for the National Speakers Association. He's a global speaking fellow. He has spoken in 24 countries around the world. And, you know, you have a lot of years left. So I'm thinking that you could probably hit 50. Right. So I think you should be going for 50 countries at minimum. His insights have been shared all across all media, all around the world. And at this point, how many is this, your sixth book?
This is my seventh book altogether, my sixth business book. I also wrote a sappy dad book in there. But yeah, my sixth business book.
Y'all. Such a lifelong, and here's what I would say. It's like, I think this is like one of those great conversations where there's just a firsthand wealth of knowledge, right? Like today's conversation isn't going to be about things that you pulled from other places or things that you learned. It's what you do. It's what you live. It's how you've done this. And that's kind of where I want to start. As you might be somewhat newer to some of the people in our audience, and we have a lot of people in our audience who aspire to write a book one day, speak on stages one day. So what I would love for you to share with everyone is, how'd you get into this? How long have you been doing it? And what should that aspiring speaker or aspiring author know? What do they need to know?
Sure. Well, I think first I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the lovely introduction and the acknowledgement. You know, it was in my careers. I look back at you and Rory and the tremendous work and the pride I have welling up inside me. I feel very paternal, but very proud. When I met Rory, it was 19 years old and incredible potential. And I love that line that says, for those of us who have enjoyed a measure of success, it's important that we send the elevator back down and to help up. And I watch what you do now, and both of you and the audience and the people and the brands that you've built and the careers that you've bolstered is phenomenal. I mean, my background, and everybody has a background, right? Everybody starts somewhere. And I was in marketing and public relations for many, many years. I helped organizations craft the words they use to better describe what they do. That was the early part of my career. I worked for some major brands and was on staff. I was the PR director at Children's Hospital in Denver, Colorado in my early 20s. And I had great success in generating publicity and coverage on Good Morning America and Oprah and Today Show and all the magazines. But the world has changed in a significant way. And what was then back trying to get on magazines, on our radio shows, today, of course, it's blogs and podcasts and different ways for us to communicate. But I made a transition about 25 years ago as I realized that you can actually get paid to teach what you know. And so after having a reasonable career in this work, I was invited to speak at an organization. And it was to the core who I was, because I think I'm a teacher at the core. And it just grew from there. So now we're in my 25th year. I speak for a living full time, and I leverage that for consulting. And we have a variety of others, assessments and that as well. But to the core, I love sharing from the front of the room. As you had mentioned, this is my sixth book, and I think all of that's important because it's important to stay relevant. It's important to stay current, and we look back at what we knew 10 years ago, and we better know something different today. If we're teaching the same things and sharing the same information and strategies that we did 10 years ago, it's antiquated. How we buy, how we connect, how we learn and pay and share is all different. So it's exciting for me because there's always something to learn. There's always some new strategies and tactics to share. And I'm fortunate. Actually, it's been 26 countries now that I've spoken in around the world. In November, I'm in. Oh boy, here's some geographic name dropping. I'm really fortunate because I get to bring my lovely wife with me. We're speaking in London, Barcelona, Amsterdam, Malta, uh, Vienna, and Gdansk. So
Love,
it's
love
a
that.
tremendous time of life.
I love that. And one of the things you said that I want you to circle back on, because I remember my early days, and this was, Lord, 18 years ago, when I was, joined the Nationals of Speakers Association in my early 20s and was going to all these sessions, learning from people who'd been in the business for 10, 15, 20, 25 years. And I remember sitting in this one particular session, and a question was asked, like, how do you book speaking gigs? Like, how do you get on these stages? Like, I want to do that. And I remember one of the speakers was like, well, you just need to answer the phone when it rings.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice?
How did you make the phone ring?
Ah,
So
yesteryear.
this is
Yeah.
a question that still plagues me today. And so I would love for you to share. It's like, how did you make the transition from
Sure.
like being in corporate marketing to that first invitation to speak to, oh no, like this is my job now. Like this is my thing. I am a speaker. How did that happen?
Well, let me start by saying, here's what many of us have learned: speaking is not a business. It's not. Getting the gig is the business. Speaking's the performance. We love to do that. We talk to countless people who have this something burning in their heart, this passion. I want to share. I want to touch lives. Nobody's hiring speakers because you want to touch lives. Nobody's hiring speakers because you want a cathartic experience and exercise your demons or your therapy on stage. I'm actually fortunate that I'm on the main stage for the National Speakers Association this year. In my session, my very first slide is somebody putting on a pair of blue rubber gloves. And I'm going to say, hang on, friends, this is going to be uncomfortable. You're going to feel a little pressure. And there's just a lot of nonsense in this business. And I love sharing what it really takes. And I'll talk about sort of the marketing aspect of it. But one of the interesting things is we have a very interesting profession, because arguably it's the only profession where most people get into this business because they're encouraged by somebody who has no idea what it really is. Oh my God, that story about you and surviving cancer when you climbed that mountain and you fell into that crevasse, and you say, you should be a professional speaker. I love the way you tell stories. You could touch people's lives. And I want to say, think you should just feed your family. Now, if you can use that story and leverage it to help companies increase their sales and guard against disruption and future proof their engagement, or motivate their people, that's legitimate as well, then there's something there. But the reality is the business of speaking is marketing. I hear people say, listen, I took a 3-day boot camp on hand gestures and I can't get the phone to ring. And I'm like, pick up the phone, you know, or here's the, and I go on a rant about this. People say, you know, the world needs to hear your story. They don't. Sorry, they don't. They need to increase their sales. Now, if your story can help them do that, right? And so that's the mind shift that's so important. For me, it was a seminal moment. And it was actually at one of the National Speakers Association conferences where I had a real learning moment. I had a new book. My book, It's Not Who You Know, It's Who Knows You, had come out, and it was 20 years ago. And I was doing very well. And I was talking about my speaking business. And I was sitting around with some colleagues, and our mutual friend, Dave Horsager, I had talked about my business, and he said, dude, you don't have a business. And I looked at him, I said, what are you talking about? I said, this is my best year ever. He said, no. You have gigs. You don't have a business. And I said, what's the difference? He says, how much are you going to make next year? I said, I have no idea. I said, of course you don't, because you have no process. How are you finding contacts and turning them into leads? How are you turning leads into prospects? How are you leveraging and converting those prospects into paying clients and beating out other speakers for that particular slot? He says, you are so headed for a fall. I've seen this before. I've seen speakers make 7 figures and they can't pay their mortgage 2 years ago because what they were talking about was hot. He says, you need to put a business behind it. And so that's what we did. And I went home that night and I didn't sleep. And I went home and I talked to my wife at the end of the conference. And we talked about how do we do this and how do we find a way to hire staff and create systems and process. And to be clear, it's not an automated system. I don't automate anything. Yeah, I could hit one click and reach 50,000 prospects to say, hey, hire David as a speaker. And 99.9% of them will never be opened. So we have gotten very good at creating a process. We find ways, we find organizations that hold meetings. We look them up. We find out who they had for last year, when their next meeting is. We know when to pitch, and we try and make it very simple. We know that the one behavior that is predictive of our success is if I can get prospects, people who hold meetings, to watch my preview video. It's pretty good. And if they watch that, I have a chance. If they don't, they don't. So I don't want to go too deep into it, but you're right. It's a business. It's a business, and it's a business that I'm up at 5 a.m. I go to the gym. I try and be at my desk no later than 6:30 or 7, because I want to get a little bit of work in, because I have a lot of clients internationally. And so, you know, it's a business. And I think probably the most elusive thing in the speaking business is longevity, because most speakers starve. We like to call new speakers ignorance on fire. They're so passionate that, and I'm on a mission to help speakers feed their families so they can do this for a long time.
You know what I love about this, and I kind of knew what you were going to say, which is why I asked it, but I think it's such an important message for everyone to hear, because what people love is creating content, sharing their content,
Performing. Yeah.
performing.
Great.
But what you have to become amazing at is the sales, the marketing, right?
Absolutely.
We had this conversation not too long ago at one of our events, and someone said, well, you know, I'm running out of, kind of running out of rope before I'm going to have to go back and get a full-time job. And my question is, well, how many sales calls are you making every day? And they kind of looked at me, and I was like, every week? And they kind of looked at me and they're like, what do you mean by sales calls? And I was like, okay, well, we need to talk about actually how you get booked on stages.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that means that you're calling people, you're emailing people, you're doing
100%.
outreach. This is sales.
So much of the conversation is around the passion and the story, and stepping into your truth, and or stepping into your power and speaking your truth. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. And people, that's really hurtful for people. I don't mean it to be, because it's coming from a good place. People are telling other people, speakers are telling other people, their friends and family, oh my God, you have this, you're so good at telling stories. If you have passion in your heart, if you have a drive, you can be a speaker. No, I mean, that's the foundation of it. I mean, you don't have to be great to make it as, you don't have to be great. You have to be good. Your
Mm.
content has to be great, but you have to have sales and marketing. And I don't know why that's scary for people. I think some people are reluctant to seem overly self-promotional, but the reality is you will touch very few lives. You will make a very small impact if you don't get booked.
Okay.
And think of it like any other business. And you and Rory have been teaching this for years. Uh, People don't know who they don't know.
Mm.
And I'm not famous. I'm good at what I do. There's a lot of people who are good at what they do. I'm not on Shark Tank, right? I don't have that kind of a platform. So we hustle and we work and we work. And half of the presentations, the gigs that I get are from organizations who had no idea who I was until we reached out to them.
I think
Half.
everyone needs to pause and let that sink in. It's like if you think some bureau is going to fill up your calendar, or you think some agent's going to show up on your door and magically get you booked, or any of that, the truth is you're the agent.
Well, you're your sales director.
Yeah.
That's the other part as well. Is even when I got staff, and this is sort of the quintessential E myth, right? It's Michael Gerber that we feel like as long as suddenly we have help, so we kind of push it to them, like, good, finally, you go do it. You can't abdicate, right? We think that we're delegating. We're not. We're abdicating. You go do it. It doesn't work that way. You have to be the sales director of your own organization until you get big enough to actually hire a sales director. But if you're big enough to be able to have an assistant, I love that line. I'm trying to think who said it, that if you don't have an assistant, you are your assistant, right? And so, but we also have a responsibility. We can't bring on that second person until we are confident that we can cover their salary for at least a year, right? Because it takes time. But it's time, it's process. But here's the best part, AJ. It's worth it. It's worth it because you got to feed your family while you get to do what you maybe were born to do. But ultimately it has to be in the service of others. It has to be to help them do what they do. They're not paying you $10,000, $15,000 for you to have a cathartic experience and bring joy to people's lives, right? um, and so, yeah, and because I've had a measure of success and I've done this for a long time, I'm approached by a lot of people who want to tell me their story, right? Here's what I've done, here's what I want to do. I survived cancer. I won this Olympic medal. And listen, I'm not mocking because I haven't done any of those things. But the your business is not about your story. It's about how do you leverage your story in the service of others. And it has to be unique enough. So there's a lot to go into, but yeah, sales and marketing.
I
Sales and
love
marketing.
that. How do you think books play into this
Very
business?
important.
So,
Yeah.
clearly you think so because every time I talk to you, there's a new book coming out, and maybe we just need to talk more. I feel like you
Right.
come out a lot of books, right? And it's like, I think it's so funny because Rory and I are in the process of writing our next book, which is together. And we were just talking about the writing process. And, the last time that we were in the writing process was 2012. It's 12
Wow.
years ago. And we're like, man, like dust off the cobwebs. And we know how important it is in terms of just being able to, well, one, we believe in the power of books. I believe the
Sure.
power of a book, it has the power to change a life. I think it's a really important component of legitimizing all of the thoughts that we have and formalizing them into something that someone else
Absolutely.
and digest and actually act on. But in terms of the power of a book and how it can help you build your business,
Yep.
like how would you say that all integrates?
Well, it doesn't in a big way. And I'm gonna challenge one small thing that you said. First of all, I write books not because it's time for another book. It's relevance, it's gravitas, right? It's that credibility that they're the person that wrote that book. But I'm also very cognizant that a lot of people aren't going to read it. Larry Winget is a little cynical about it. He says, "I sell souvenirs in the back of the room." Right. And I read all of his books, but I do that as well. I mean, it's a nice ego boost. I get done speaking and people line up and they want to take pictures or a signed book. But I know a good number of them are never going to read it. I just say put it on the shelf next to Good to Great or Take the Stairs or Atomic Habits, so I look like a big deal. Um, I hope people read my books. I put a lot into it, but even if they don't, here's the value, and it's a tremendous value. It's credibility. they're the ones who wrote X or Y. We find that in our marketing and in our sales processes, we're introducing people to me as a speaker and a good resource for their next conference. Just the fact that I have a book coming out, piques their interest, which is really interesting. That it's just as valuable in the lead up phase as it is to when you publish it. And of course, the time afterwards, because you don't want it to be an event. You want it to be a process and a marathon. But books are really important to legitimize that. Why are we turning to this person for consulting or speaking and other? Because they're the ones who wrote blank, right? Most people's first book tends to be just a compilation of blogs and articles that they've written. It's like, I've written all of this stuff. Let's put it all together in some reasonably linear fashion, but it doesn't really work. And I'll freely admit that was my first book. It was just, here's a compilation of all my writings. But I try and be much more intentional now. Everybody comes up with a title they think is the cure for cancer that tastes like chocolate, and then we learn. I learned from Rory. I learned from Rory when he learned the lesson and realized that, and what he teaches, and I took this to heart, was that title has to be something aspirational. Like, I want that. And I didn't learn my lesson. I had a book that came out during COVID called The Morning Huddle, which was the physical manifestation of a video series that I had created. And it's all these great conversations for your morning huddle. Nobody sits around and says, I need the morning huddle, right? I need, but do they need to know how to be ridiculously easy to work with? Do they, or to do business with? Do they need to know why customers leave? My book, Why Customers Leave and How to Win Them Back, is in 6 languages now, because it's perfectly aligned with Rory's lesson about that's aspirational. I want that. I want to know that. And so there's a whole process. I'm actually holding a retreat to help people write their first book. And there's so many people, people come up to you all the time saying, how do you do that? God, I wish I could write it. Well, you can. But I think there's also a fallacy that writers enjoy writing. I don't. I think I'm a good writer. It's agony for me, but I'm disciplined. I do it because I need to feed my family. I've got 5 colleges I'm paying for, 5 colleges and 4 employees. And so I work, but there's a famous line a woman was asked, famous author, I can't remember her name. She was asked if she says, they were asked her, do you enjoy writing? And I loved her answer. She says, I love to have written. I'm like, that, yes, that. But there's also that moment, and you guys know that moment when that box arrives, and you put a knife across the seam, and you open it up, and you look at it, and you grab it, and you feel it, and you go, wow, that's my book. Like, I did this. Like, I wrote a book, and you've seen it on the screen, but now you can touch it and hold it. It's powerful. It's really powerful. And it's something that many millions of people talk about, and a much smaller fraction actually do it. So it's incredibly important. It's a legacy thing, depending on what it is you want to write. It's a galvanization of the content and the knowledge that you've learned over the years that you can put down on paper and is there for history. It's an accomplishment, but for a business, it's credibility. It absolutely helps. They don't have to buy your book. They don't have to read your book. But the fact that you wrote it, and take some time and write a good book, don't have AI write it for you, write your book. It's credibility. And that's really important. It drives your fee structure. It drives your visibility. Very, very important.
Yeah, one of the things that we talk about all the time is you can actually look at the trajectory of any speaker's kind of financial path in terms of their fees, and literally go, no book, best-selling book, right? Wall Street Journal best-selling book, New York Times best-selling book. And it's like, you can literally watch, the escalation when it comes to fee structure with the enhancement of that credibility. And so I think that's just a really important conversation, also leading up to this new book that you have released, which I think it's a killer title. And I think everyone wants that. So let's talk a little bit about this new book, Ridiculously Easy to Do Business With. And I think we would all like to know, how do we become that? Right? So well, what's the book about?
Sure. The book is about, at the core, it's customer experience. I spent the early part of my career as a speaker and a consultant, probably the first 15 years, talking about marketing and branding. How do we better describe what we do? How do we choose and craft those words? But I saw a significant change happening in the marketplace. And this was, of course, with the advent of social media and social proof and mobile devices and everything else. And it became very clear that what we say about ourselves, while not unimportant, is far less impactful today than what other people say about us. And so that was the research that went into my book, Why Customers Leave. And we're in a time, a really remarkable time. It's a great time to be a customer or a client. The conveniences are off the charts. It's a tough time to be in business. And so, as I have spoken, because I'm also a former Vistage chair, I led CEO roundtable groups for years, and I've spoken to 539 CEO roundtable groups over the last 15 years. And as I would go around the table, I say, what's your competitive advantage? Why you? What's the secret sauce? It's always some version of the same answer. It's our superior quality, commitment, caring, trust. It's about our people. Here's what the research shows. People are prioritizing speed. Customers are prioritizing speed of access, speed of answers, speed of resolution, speed of delivery, simplicity of process, accommodation for unique circumstances. Don't be rigid. And of course, convenience. In many ways, our colleague Sally Hogshead talks about that different is better than better. And I would submit that convenient is better than better because we're in a time of pervasive quality. Everybody's good. Everybody's good. So where are the real opportunities for distinction, for standing apart and standing out? And that's what drove the book Ridiculously Easy to Do Business With. It's about reducing friction at every point possible in the process. If you have a business process, an interaction, a purchasing process, or ordering for your clients that was designed 10 years ago, it's already outdated because we're used to being able to buy with one click. And we can lament the loss of iconic brands. You know, we can lament the loss of Bed Bath and Beyond or Toys R Us. I guarantee you, nobody's struggling to find toys. Nobody's struggling to find toys. Why did they go? Because we have other better options. Better by some measure. It's more convenient. It's more prevalent. Whatever that might be. And so, in the book, I came up with 28 different ways to be ridiculously easy. And I honor business. I was on a podcast and somebody was asking me, why is it that business just doesn't get it? And I said, I think they get it. Of course they get it. There's very smart, very good people running businesses. But I think there's a grand experiment going on, which is how much can we cut? How much can we push to the consumers? How much self-checkout before it's that law of diminishing return? And they say, this has gotten so frustrating that now we're going to go somewhere else. And we're still figuring out what that is. They're young people. I heard that somebody said for the first time ever, we're serving 5 generations at the same time. And young people want to buy very different than older people. And we have to find ways of serving all of them. Those points of frustration, some of them are pretty obvious about being ridiculously easy to reach or to resolve issues. But I even cover chapters, you need to be ridiculously easy to see. Most marketing collateral material, business cards and others, are designed by people in their 20s and 30s. 65% of all revenue is by people over 50. I can't see any of that. I'm 60 years old. I've got reading glasses everywhere. We go into restaurants now and I can't read menus. They're too small, or they're on a QR code and they make us watch it on look at the menu on our cell phones. And so I think business is trying really hard to manage that customer journey, to do things that are efficient and effective and profitable. And my job is to bring an external perspective of saying, here's what's frustrating for your customers. And why is that important? Because we have a bullhorn that reaches around the world. Now we have Yelp and TripAdvisor and Rotten Tomatoes and Glassdoor. Everybody's good today because if you weren't, you would be outed very, very quickly. And so in the book, Ridiculously Easy to Do Business With, it's sort of here's an outside perspective on all of your systems and processes, and here's how your customers really feel about it. And it's also a way to sort of future-proof your engagement and say, how do you think your customers want to do business with you or will want to do business with you, not 10 years from now, 2 years from now? What do we need to start doing now to make those tweaks and adjustments? We're all competing against Amazon. and Uber in terms of simplicity of process. And I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned. I've been very gratified. We've just been out, as of the recording of this podcast, we've just been out for a couple of weeks. We went to number one very, very quickly in the consumer relations category. I think we were number two in entrepreneurialism or something else. And of course, that's Amazon. I mean, let's talk legitimate. The goal is Wall Street Journal or New York Times or others as well, but it's a process. And it's for anyone in business to be not just competent, not just capable, but preferable. And that's the key that we don't talk.
You said this, and I'm curious to know, in the book, like, what are some of the biggest frustrations that customers have with companies? Like, what are they?
Yeah, well, some of the frustrations are obvious ones, which is just when we're literally yelling into the phone, real person, agent. I think you said no, right? And there's, I understand, I'm not naive. I understand that AI and chatbots, and it's all part of where we are, and it's all part of where we're going. But when they make it so difficult to get an off ramp to a real person when you need one, I think I'm the only person on the planet. I've never had a question that's frequently asked, apparently, because I can never find my issue. And one of the things I talk about is there's a strategy, is that if you're really frustrated and you can't get through, whether you're typing in a chat bot or you're on the phone, just start shouting profanity into the phone. And AI recognizes that it's frustrating, and they'll transfer you to a real person. Or just yell cancel membership, and then you get to it. And people laugh, and it's true. It's unfortunate. Why do we have to yell profanity
Right,
in
we
order
have to
to
get
talk to?
mad to get
Why do we
attention.
have to get to that point? And then here's the thing, because I have a real heart for customer service agents. What a tough job. But now organizations are frustrating their customers to the point where by the time we talk to a real person, they're being inundated and abused all day long. I think it's incredibly unfair that they do that to those representatives. What else? It's an inflexibility that shouldn't be. Somebody was asking, like, how could this possibly be getting worse? If we've been talking about customer service or experience, whatever, for 50 years, how could it be getting worse? And it is. And here's why, is because we're getting more rigid. We're trying so hard in our companies to have some level of predictability in the process. Here's how they reach out or learn about us and inquire and buy and negotiate and pay and deliver. And it works, right? And if we can have greater level of predictability of that process, we can predict revenue and cash flow, right? We can plan for that. We can hire for that. The problem is your customers haven't read your employee manual. They don't know how they're supposed to buy from you. They just know how they want to, but that's changing. So we get rigid and we say no to stupid things. I was checking out of a hotel and they're like, sorry, we're not doing any late checkouts. I'm like, well, I can't get out. I'm going to and they said, yeah, we're going to charge you for a second day if you can't be out. I'm like, okay, then I just won't check out of the room. There we go. I just pay for another. And it was an easy yes, but the manager said no late checkouts today, right? And the pushback I get for this kind of flexibility, I think, is really important. I get this pushback and they say, well, if we do it for you, or if we do it for him, we have to do it for everyone. And my answer is, no, you don't. It's your business. It's such a crutch. Well, if we do it for you, we have to do it for everyone. You do whatever works for your customers. Most won't need the special accommodations. And so when I talk about being ridiculously easy, like I have clients all over the world. I've got clients in Mumbai and Singapore and Johannesburg. When I have a call with a client, a Zoom call, I'm the one talking at 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock every time. It's never them, because I am ridiculously easy to do business with, and because my competitors, my colleagues, our friends, they're phenomenal. We have such great colleagues who are so good at what they do. What's my competitive advantage? Yeah, I'm going to knock it out of the park on stage, but I'm also not going to make you search for a phone number. I'm not going to make you fill out a contact form in order to reach a real person. I thank speakers all the time, and I've spoken at 9 of the international associations. I said, I want to thank you all for putting contact forms instead of emails on your website, because you put my kids through college. Because I've already sent over a contract by the time they've responded to your contact form. And to be fair, I've got multiple small business. They all have contact forms, and I have cell phone numbers for every member of my team. We have email addresses. I'm ridiculously easy to get in touch with. I mean, there's some maddening things, AJ, of companies that make it difficult to reach you. I mean, are you that good that your customers are going to put up with that? And people say, well, you don't have life balance if you're doing. I'm not talking to 3 o'clock in the morning every day, but this feeds my family.
Mm,
And my clients ask, and the answer is yes. What's the question?
mm.
Right? Because
That's good. I literally yesterday, as you're talking, I'm like, this literally happened to me yesterday. I signed up for this health portal, and I won't share their name, but it's like this supposedly amazing thing. I was referred by a very good friend, and you do all this blood work, and then it's kind of putting the patient back in control of all of your panels. So
yeah,
the doctors don't own it. And it was like a really cool concept. So I've been trying to schedule my second round of blood work, right? There's no email address. There's no phone number. The chat bot keeps saying, can't accept request right now. So I'm like, I can't chat with you. I can't call you. I can't email you. And it won't let me schedule my appointment. And it has to be in a certain period of time, which now has expired. Now I have to wait 30 more days to use what I've paid for. And it was like, I was
maddening.
to the point of like, if I can't use it, I want a refund. I can't talk to anyone to even request it.
Right.
And so
But that's the other thing. That's the other thing. And you talk about where the frustrations are about organizations that make it ridiculously easy to cancel. Well, they do that on purpose. I think it's slimy. Or here's the other one: is they give you a free trial, but it's not a free trial. Right? Sign up for a free trial. What's the requirement? You have to give them your credit card information, right? And then we have that wall comes up, that trepidation. It's the number one reason for abandoned shopping carts in membership trials
mm,
is a requirement for financial information. So I go through all of that. Yeah, but it's one of those. It's like, who designed this process? And that's the difference between product centric and customer centric. That product centric is we're very good at what we do. And so let's deliver that and sell as many as we can and create market share. Nothing wrong with that.
I
Right. I
love
mean,
that. One of the
yeah,
things that I love, like we've had this conversation so often, and like one of the things that we're really big advocates of, and I love, like there's an entire book about this, is give it all away for free. In fact, give it away, give everything away to the point where your customer says, man, I feel like I've gotten so much value from you. I need to pay you. And that's so counterculture, right?
it
And
is.
we brought that up, and somebody said, well, aren't you afraid that people are just going to take advantage of you? And I'm like, no, I'm not at all, because they could go get this information for free at tons of places. They're not paying
Right.
for the information. At that point, they're going, I want it from you, because that's who I've begun to trust. That's who I like now. This is who I have a relationship with. It's like the information is out there. Buy a book, listen to a podcast, read a blog, watch YouTube, watch any of the social media platforms. It's like whatever it is you want to know, you can go find it. You're not paying for information at this point. You're paying for experience, relationship, trust, organization, application, execution. You're paying for those things. So don't be afraid to give things away so that people understand like there's real value here. I want to give you my money, not I have to.
I think for many of us, we've come to realize some time back, the biggest competitor out there is free.
Mm.
Right. I think when newspapers stopped running the presses and they thought we're going to just think about how much money we're going to save and we'll have everybody do a subscription. I'm reading an article online and all of a sudden I get stopped and something pops up that I have to subscribe to the New York Times to read the rest of the article. I don't, because free is pervasive. But I like what you said, but I think it goes even further. And this is where you have to um, accept the compliments and realize that some people, when you've built a really strong personal brand, when you are known for the wisdom and the content and the value that you provide, there's a certain category of people that want to touch the robe. They want to be there because it's you. They want to pay more and get a deeper access to you and information because it's you. And you've earned that, and you have to earn that, which is the other part. You can be well known and have a great personal brand, but if it's not a brand of value and that people aspire to be you to some extent, there are people who will come to that workshop to learn from you. There's things that we can learn almost anything online. You can go to YouTube and you can learn how to use YouTube, right? But when you have built that strong service-oriented, high-content personal brand, there's a category of people that will only pay that money and do more than what they could do free because they want to touch the robe. And that's something that you build and something to be proud of, and it's something to leverage.
Mm. So if you were going to, kind of summarize some of the highlights of the book and go, all right, everyone who's listening, clearly we don't have time to talk about all 28 things, but if there were 2 or 3 things that you're like, hands down, you must be doing this to be ridiculously easy to do business with, what are some of those things?
Let me go a little bit broader, and which is the importance of sort of the concept. I was about to keynote a conference, and the CEO was on before I was. It was a huge organization. There was probably 800 people in the audience, and the CEO was doing the big rah-rah speech. And at the very end, he said, and remember, we're going to win on quality. At the end of the day, it's about quality. And everybody cheered and went crazy. And I thought to myself, I could not disagree more. At the end of the day, it's not about quality. It's not everybody's good. Everybody's got quality. At the beginning of the day, it's about quality.
That's
Quality is the entry
a
fee.
requirement for entry.
Quality gives you permission to do business in the marketplace. You better be good, or the marketplace will figure it out. But at the end of the day, it's about competitive advantage. It's not what do you do well? What do you do better than others who do it well? And so back to the book, I laid out 28 short chapters of here's all the things that you can do to gain a competitive advantage. Recognize that your competitors are all good. And here's the worst thing about competitors. And nobody says this out loud. Most of those competitors are very, very nice people. They're not our enemies. They're our colleagues in arms. We're all trying to feed our families. And if you believe that you're so good that everybody just has to discover you and they're going to reject everybody else. I heard somebody saying that they what makes us different is we actually do what we say we're going to do. There you go. And I look at him, I said, you actually believe that, don't you? Do you actually believe that your competitors are consistently underperforming and that they have but to discover you? Everybody's good. You need a competitive advantage, and the competitive advantage is eliminate friction. Don't make your customers do business the way you want them to do if they want it to do differently. So it's taking a step back. It's understanding what customer centricity really means, and all of this, of course, profitably. But we're in a very competitive environment. I think the theme of the book and the examples are all about here's how you do it. Here's why it's a challenge for us, and here's a different way. And each chapter has stories and examples and marketplace examples and research to bolster the points. But it's very, very. I mean, even the tagline says it's a practical guide to giving customers what they want, how and when they want it. And it's an ongoing process and of re-examination. And it's also my mantra and my message as I travel the country and travel around the world. My presentations there's a lot of humor. It's very entertaining, but I use that strategically to temper a tough message about what it takes to compete and win today. And whether you're in small business, whether you're building your brand, whether you aspire to be a speaker or a consultant, it's a business and you treat it like a business.
So what would you say if I were to ask you when you,
Sure.
This whole competitive advantage, and that's a part of what you've got to figure out, like what is, as a speaker and an author, what is your competitive advantage?
My competitive advantage is I'm always relevant, and I am committed to delivering it, knocking out of the park on the stage every time. That I think is the entry fee. I'm really good at what I do, as others are as well. My competitive advantage is I never stop marketing. I never stop selling. Through COVID, through all of that as well, I did 87 virtual presentations on a webcam in my home studio because I don't have a plan B. And I love what I do, but I don't get to do it if I don't have clients to do it for. And so my competitive advantage is that I will outmarket. When we have a potential hit, I do a bomb video message and I talk to him. Hi, it's David Arvin. Thanks for this. I can't wait to work with you. Here's all the books that I've written. And we send them a book, and here's what we do on our first email. And here's what we do on our second email if they don't respond. Here's how we put them back in the system. We don't automate anything. My competitive advantage is we are relentless and we are diligent and we are strategic and we are ridiculously easy to do business with.
I mean,
See a
honestly,
great way to wrap that up?
competitive advantage should be, I always do outreach, right?
Always. That
And
there's
that's a big
that's a good way of
deal.
synopsis. Outreach never stops. I'm not famous. I'm good at what I do. The people who I do business with love me. My friends and family love me. You guys love me. I love you guys. But there's a huge portion of the population who has no idea who I am and that I exist. I talk to people. If you're in an auditorium or a conference center and you're speaking to 600 people, there's 4.3 million people within a 60-mile radius who have no idea you're there.
Yeah.
So how do we leverage proximity? How do we leverage? So yeah, outreach is incredibly important. It's probably the most important thing for my longevity.
I love that. And I think for everyone who's listening, if you would just take a minute or 5 or 10, whatever you got, and ask yourself, like, what is my competitive advantage? And it's not that I care a lot, and it's not that I have a superior product. It's not that it's a high quality product or whatever else. It's like, what is your competitive advantage? And I think also asking yourself the question, which hopefully is similar, but what makes it ridiculously easy to do business with me?
Or ridiculously easy to choose you, right? That's a whole chapter in the book as well. It's not even just how you do business. Make it ridiculously easy to choose you over your competitors. And to do that, you need to be really clear what others are doing. We never denigrate them. We never criticize competitors. I love complimenting competitors. They're phenomenal. But this is what I do. They do this and this and this and this. They're really great, but I specialize in this. Well, that's what I need. I think it's a better choice. So that market analysis is important. We could talk all day, but I know you have time constraints.
I know this is so good though. I love it. And y'all, I would highly encourage for you to go pick up the book. I already have the book. It's on my summer read list. And I'm even more intrigued now to go, what are these, 28 things? And now I'm like, well, I need my team to know what these 28 things are. And I love that what you said too. It's like, you have to identify the friction points, right? And that just means all of us have to take a step back as a consumer. And that would be like a great, I think, just even for me, I'm just going like, man, I wonder when the last time I clicked through our website, how easy is it to get in touch with me? And if I wondered if I, like, with an anonymous email, hit our customer care at email, how quickly people would respond. And it's like, I'm so curious now to go through our own systems and processes.
You could shop yourself. Yeah, that's a great
Where
idea.
are our friction points as a consumer and as an entrepreneur, business owner? You should know those, right? And so ask yourself, when's the last time that I actually went through my own processes, the own systems with our team to go, where is it hard? Where is there friction and how can I make it easier? And I love that because I think what you said earlier, and I want to kind of like wrap it with this, is speed is really becoming an increasingly important part of why people do business with you.
Very much. Jay Baer did some breaking research on that recently as well. Great colleagues, Jay Baer and Shep Hyken and Roger Dooley wrote a book called Friction that changed my life. I am so annoyed looking at the world now because he's made me hyper aware of things I hadn't even thought of before. So we have wonderful colleagues in this space. But yeah, go pick up the book, Amazon. Ridiculously
Amazon.
easy to do business with.
And I will put the direct link to pick up the book in the show notes. And for everyone else, make sure you stick around for the recap version, which will be coming next. Dave, love you. Love what you're doing. Such a rich conversation. Thank you so much for being here. And if people want to follow you, stay in touch with you, what's your preferred platform?
You can check me out on my website at davidavrin.com. And then it gets a little complicated. And on Instagram, it's The Real David Avrin. That's a catfish for another day. But yeah, check me out Instagram, The Real David Avrin. TikTok, it's, I think, Real David Avrin. But if there are hundreds or thousands of followers, it's the real account. Otherwise, it's not me. Go to my website, davidavrin.com.
So go to his website, davidavrin.com. Go to Amazon, pick up the book, Ridiculously Easy to Do Business With. Thank you guys for being here. We'll see you next time.